Assalamu alaikum, I'm Yasin Barnes, and this is the Muslims Connected podcast, a podcast for those looking for light and direction. Today we are joined by, I say, a journalist and an author, which is just an underplay of what he really is. He is a storyteller, a re-storyteller, a story reteller also, a man of the world, a child of the ocean, Shafiq Morton. Shukran for joining us today.
Not fun, Yasin, a great pleasure.
I'd say child of the ocean as a man who's been a surfer for
More than 50 years.
That's so let's start as the child. When did you get into the ocean? Let's start with the ocean first.
I got into the ocean probably when my age was in single digits, which is quite a while ago. And the ocean is a relationship that you have.
Yeah.
It's a relationship with your creator, with creation. And I kind of got hooked. And I've been hooked ever since. And I will still go into the ocean. And I'll probably, as I said in the classic style, with my boots on.
with a surfboard under the arm.
Absolutely.
And then also, you've been telling people stories and giving people platforms to voice their stories for also, again, 40 plus years. Am I?
A long time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw the number when I was doing the research.
And the numbers scare me.
Yeah. So when did that passion start also, where was it in school already that you realized that you want to be a part of telling people, giving people the platform?
Yeah, I mean, as we were saying before the podcast, things happen by default and by accident. And when I was in primary school, I won an essay competition by accident. I wasn't meant to win it, but I won it. And it kind of inspired me to the fact that, yes, you can tell a story, and sometimes people will listen and sometimes they will be interested. And my trajectory in terms of career was always directed towards communication. I actually qualified as a school teacher, taught for a very few years in Lavender Hill, but most of my life I've basically been in media, and it's really exciting. You know, people are exciting, and if you find people exciting, media is the place to be.
So once you, I'll say, studied to be a teacher, did you go back to study journalism, or was it just a passion that was so fueled that got you into the industry?
Journalism was something that I just did. And remember, in my day, which is a few years ago, there weren't places where you could study journalism. And in any case, journalism is like plumbing. You only know what it's like when your head's in the toilet. It's a trade like anything else. And it's a trade of understanding people, of understanding how to communicate, whether it's in front of a camera, or behind a microphone, or with a pen, or with a laptop.
So let's say you find a story that gives you, how can I say, gives you like a little bit of spark to chase it. Well, how did you approach the people to get their story out? Because that's also a skill set that you need to learn over the years of what their factors are, so that you can that they give you all of the, I'll say, of the details at least.
I mean, the thing, Yasin, is don't doorstop people. That's going to get you nowhere. And do not be aggressive. There used to be a lady on TV, I call her the Orange Lady. She used to harass people and think by harassing them, she was going to get the story.
Yeah.
It's not like that. I say give people as much rope as you've got. Allow them to be themselves, and then they will tell you the truth at the end of the day. And it's been amazing. I've done so many interviews where I've played the game, and right at the end, in the last seconds, they reveal who they are, and you've won the game.
That's amazing.
So it's a question of, if you're interviewing somebody, for example, that they're a guest, honor them. They're also a human being. Let them have their say. And at the end of the day, you will get the truth.
And today the tables have turned. You are now...
Seems like it, yeah. Maybe in the last 30 seconds, will be a confession or something.
It's going to come out of me this time. So, yeah, so when you... I say, because you're also a man of Cape Town, where you've been, I'll say, getting the stories out of the people. How, I'll say, because you've also covered Mandela coming out and all of that. What was your approach to get into those spaces and to be seen and to be heard, at least?
Well, that was extremely hard work. I've had a very long career, and I was able to act as a stringer, which is a fancy word for a freelancer, which is a fancy word for partly employed, which is a fancy word for unemployed. So nonetheless, I used to work as a stringer for these particular wire services as a photographer. And it's hard work. You have to pay your dues. You have to go. And take your pictures and try and sell them. So you learn as you go along. And I was in a good space at the time, and I was able to be part of the team in Cape Town in the 80s. And we covered a lot of the stuff that happened from about 85 onwards, chasing Winnie Mandela to the airport because we didn't know when Mandela was going to be released, that kind of stuff. And in between, having the privilege, especially in the 90s, of going to stories overseas, going to Palestine and going to places where people were trying to shoot you all the time, and to floods, to all sorts of things. So it's been very exciting, but you get into it by doing it. As I said, journalism and media is a trade. And I think the harder you work, as Gary Player said, that strange golfer, the luckier you get.
Yeah. While you're covering these stories, did you know how important they were to history? Because I feel like also a lot of the time as a journalist, every day is a new story. Every day you're covering new things. When you're covering something, I'll say Mandela coming out of prison, is there ever a moment where you go, this will be told forever? This is the moment.
That's a good question. I think at the time, no. I mean, especially during apartheid and up until 94, everybody was living in the moment.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know what the future was going to be like. And I'll give you an example of what you're talking. When Mandela was released, the crowd was going mad at Victor Verster, and I turned around and I took a picture of a Toyota Cressida going through the crowd. And for years, that picture stayed in my files, and I put it up in social media once. And I got a call from Finland or Sweden, and people were saying, we've been looking for this car for years. And apparently it was the car owned by the Mauser family that took Mandela from Victor Verster to Cape Town. And by accident, I'd taken this picture. And for like 25 years, I hadn't realized the value of this picture. I just took in the moment, And that explained to me quite profoundly how sometimes you're capturing history and you're completely unaware of it.
That's amazing. And we spoke also before, I'll say before we started recording, you were shooting once, I'll say with film, and now we've moved to digital. What impact has that had as a photojournalist, at least, with regard to the amount of work you can do and the amount of work or the quality of work that now exists as well?
I mean, digital makes it really easy. That's the bottom line. I mean, in the days of film, you would have to shoot, rush to a dark room, process the film, dry the film, because remember, it's chemicals, it's wet, put it onto a drum, make a telephone call to Paris or New York or London, and wait for it to transmit. And as you go, like that on a drum, then halfway through it stops. Okay, now you have to redo it again. So your turnaround time, you'd be happy if you would do it within 2 hours. Wow. And that's really fast working with film. Digital, you're at a march, you take a picture, you press a button, and the editor in Paris has got the picture already. That's the difference. So it's gone from 3 hours, 2 hours to 2 seconds.
And then you've gone from, I'll say, from analog to digital, and then film to digital in the photo. And then when did you, I'll say, as a career, go from just photojournalism to actual journalism, and then also to radio?
Yeah, I think I've been a multimedia journalist my whole career, like photography, bit of television, writing. I had a surfing column at the Cape Times from 1977 until 1987 in the times of Tony Hurd. And what was exciting about that was I used to do commentary on the situation in the beaches, apartheid and stuff. The white community was very irritated, but Tony Hurd, as the editor, he supported me in this funny little surfing column in the newspaper. So, yeah, it's been so many different things, and you just end up transitioning all the time. As you explained, from analog to digital, from a pen and to pick a typewriter to a laptop to an Android app and that kind of stuff. So you just keep on evolving and you keep on changing for the times. And when you stop changing, that's the time to say goodbye.
Then again, what stories have stood out during the years or during your early years because normally on your path in your career and in your path in life, there's moments that give you signal to go, you are on the right path. There's moments where you go, this thing that I created, it solidifies the choices that I've made to get here. Do you have any like big monuments, or for your personal big monuments that have, I'll say, given you the motivations?
No, I mean, there's a couple. It also started with the fact that I was very keen on doing surfing photography, and I was a pioneer at the Cape in terms of shooting from the water. And I started swimming out to these big wave places. Now, I'm a keen surfer as well, and got thrashed to within an inch of my life by these waves that are bigger than houses, 5 somersaults and splattered across the kelp and stuff. But what I realized from those experiences, number one, you can survive them. And number two, submit to it, because you ain't going to beat the ocean. And it was a lesson that I was able to take later on. For example, when I would go to war zones, or you go to famines or floods, whatever, go with the flow. That was the biggest lesson I learned. Submit to it, and you're going to get much more out of it. And from there, as I say, I transitioned from that particular sense of danger to people trying to shoot me, which happened a couple of times, to getting through aggressive border posts, dealing with immigration, trying to get into Palestine, for example. So what you learn from one thing, and it teaches you a lesson, and another thing, and it teaches you a lesson and another thing. And even today, I'm still learning. I don't know everything, and I never will know everything when it comes to media.
I think that's the gift and the curse, is that you're always catching up. Every time you've learned, it's just you never get to the finish line. It's just a hurdle to the next hurdle.
It is. I mean, the job that I'm in, I really like it. It's addictive. And one thing, though, sort of a word of warning, I backed off on a lot of the dangerous stuff because you become addicted to your adrenaline. And I know a lot of guys in the industry became addicted to the adrenaline, so they were going from one war to the other, and they were becoming mad. Their private lives were in a mess. Some of them even became drug addicts. There's a Kevin Carter, South African photographer, who killed himself because he couldn't basically deal with what he was dealing with. It can be difficult.
Because you're seeing also, I'll say, the worst of humankind happen in those spaces. When was your first time going into war zones?
South Africa, Cape Flats, Athlone, 1985.
Which is very... The other thing is, maybe we live too close to actually see it as that, but according to statistics, those are war zone numbers that they have. So what was your first time going to into that?
I mean, the first time in the South African situation, this is during apartheid, going to Athlone, there's the Caspers, there's shooting, there's bodies, absolute chaos. And you drive down Kromboom Road and you come to the southern suburbs, and the doves are cooing in the tree thinking, what the hell is going on here? And that's the difficult part of it, because wherever you're in the world, that's the same. You go to the West Bank and this is action on your left-hand side. On the right-hand side, there's a settler swimming in a pool. So you get these weird and strange contrasts when you are dealing with these situations. And that also can mess your head up sometimes, because you get angry with the people who are normal and you're sympathizing with the people who are going through all the stress and the conflict and everything. I would say the most interesting places where I saw conflict was in Somalia. We were in Mogadishu, and every night we would hear Al-Shabaab and the Allied forces, they're having battles sort of just a few blocks away from the city as they were moving across the city and chasing Al-Shabaab out. And when I was in Mogadishu, there used to be a tree under which I used to stand in our compound to do my broadcast via the sat phone. And a week after we left Mogadishu, somebody blew that tree up, got hit by a mortar or something like that. Wow. Another interesting situation was in Beirut. I think that was about 2005, 2006, the war there. And I'm sleeping in my hotel, and I wake up at about 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm woken up by a massive explosion, and I basically fall out of my bed. And Israelis are now bombing the city. Fortunately, they were bombing a building behind me, but it was pretty scary at that time. And I sort of opened the curtains, and there was a ship on the horizon, just slipping over the horizon. They'd done their business, and they were going off.
How do you, obviously, those are life-changing moments too. Firstly, because I'll say growing up, we see those as visuals on the news, we see that in movies, but to witness, how does that, I'll say, affect your life? Like, how do you come back and be normal?
Yeah, that became the problem. My children used to say when I used to come back from these trips, that they would like step back for a week, because they said when I came back from Niger in North Africa, where there was a famine, they said for 2 weeks afterwards, I was scaling them out about bread crusts and food and all that kind of stuff. So it does affect you in that way. And the funniest thing is when I came back from Lebanon, it was really heavy. I was standing inside the house, and there was this massive explosion, and I ran to the little road and said, "We're being bombed." It was actually a thunderclap. And I was, okay, Shafiq, just calm down.
That's the PTSD.
Yeah, it probably was that, but I actually laughed. It was so funny. People looking like, is this guy all right, Just a clap of thunder. So these things, do affect you, but you have to learn how to cope with it.
Mm.
And the people that I really feel sorry for is when you leave these places and families and people are left behind in the ruins of their homes. Their fields have been flooded, or they've been in an earthquake, etc., etc.
Mm.
In fact, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, and I went on a number of Gift of the Givers missions, used to always say, when you have these catastrophes, the lucky ones are those who die first, because they don't have the suffering that goes on afterwards. It's a pretty hard way of looking at things, but it does kind of give you a perspective on the fragility of life, on your own life, and the value of life. It does carry on. And the other thing that you learn quite profoundly is that in these places, how people manage to carry on with their lives. Pakistan, I think 2011, giving aid to these villages just on a piece of bare earth. Go to an old man and say, "Here's water." He says, "No, I don't want water. Give it to that guy. He's more thirsty than me." This is the guy hasn't had water for a week. And you learn to see the best of humanity in the situations where you also see the worst of humanity.
That's, it's also, it's a lot to take in and a lot to grasp with. And I feel like because we just see, it's a journalist going to take photos, they come back, tell us what's happening.
It becomes a real experience.
Yeah. And because there's the image of I think it's the vulture and the baby.
That was Kevin Carter.
Yes. And then there's the debate that comes with that of going, is he supposed to help the baby? Is he supposed to come and tell us a story? What's the politics of those things? So what makes you see that situation and go, that's my calling, I have to go there?
In my case, it just happens by default. And how you deal with it as well is something that you have to learn. I mean, there are things that you see and experience that you can't put in stories.
Mm.
I mean, you can't put a mother's grief onto a page. It doesn't work that way. And that's something that as a human being you have to carry with yourself. Or seeing starving children, which I've seen, starving babies. Famine, for example, which is slow motion death. It takes people 6 to 8 weeks to die because there's no food or water. And that's the worst possible scenario to be in, because there isn't one person, you can't do very much. So you have to balance things up. What can I do? I can inform other people in the world that this is happening, and maybe somebody's going to be sympathetic, and hopefully somebody will give money for aid. Maybe this will empower another humanitarian organization to come and make a difference. That's the only way you can rationalize it. But I do think we have a duty to tell these stories, very human stories, that humankind is constantly in a state of flux, constantly in a state of conflict. Yet through all of this, there's still goodness.
Hmm. And I'll say, for years on our radio, you've been in our homes for all the years. You've been, like, every day you've brought the stories to us. Is there something you look for when you see a story to go, this is something that, that brings more urgency than other things? What do you look for when you see your stories?
I mean, when you're looking at stories, you've got to look at something that's going to resonate.
Mm.
something that's going to empower people in terms of knowledge, something that's going to help them understand the world a bit better, something that's going to give them information that they can do something with. I mean, this is media. This is not social media, which is very different. Social media is basically an emotion that lasts for as long as a person looks on the phone, and then it's gone. Real media is something that is far more enduring than that.
And you've now had to live in both worlds at the same time.
Social media is just insane. It's crazy. It's madness on steroids.
And then, so is radio your preferred sense of storytelling?
I really do enjoy radio because it's got its immediacy, and there's also an intimacy with radio. I mean, the maxim for radio is that you are talking to an audience of one. That's how simple it actually is, or I think it's that simple.
Yeah.
And if you know you're talking to one person, you've got the audience because that's who you're talking to. And also, you can't pretend to be somebody that you're not, because the people are clever. They will find you out very quickly. So you can't be phony. And also, you've got to be careful with your jokes. As a comedian, you know that better than most. I've put my foot in it a number of times. So you just have to realize who you're talking to. And it's a relationship that you develop over the years. Media is a relationship with who you're communicating.
And when you're writing a book, who's your audience then? Like, if radio is one person, what is the book?
I use the same principle when I'm writing a book, and I will put somebody in my head. I'm talking to this person. Will they understand what I'm saying? And when I write, I might have a long word. I will actually take it out and put a simpler word in it, because I think, stop showing off. You know, you yourself don't know what the word is. You yourself have to look up that word. So take it out of the text and put a word that people can understand. So I always hopefully try and ensure that if somebody can pick up something that they don't know anything about the subject and they understand it after I've written it, then I've achieved an objective.
So, because you were a teacher first and a journalist, which is the same thing in terms of taking information and letting people understand it in a simpler form, which is journalism throughout and throughout. What was your inspiration, like growing up, that motivated you into those spaces as well?
Yeah, in journalism, people like John Pilger and Robert Fisk always inspired me. John Pilger for his amazing documentaries that he did, his fearlessness. Robert Fisk for just being Robert Fisk. A hell of a character, really is. He used to drink everybody under the table, but that's another story. He has passed on. But a very ferocious and a man of integrity and focus. And those were the kind of people that entertained. Noam Chomsky as a theorist, but he's very academic, and I have to really listen closely because I'm quite stupid to understand what Noam Chomsky is saying. People like that.
And in your own, I'll say, in those who surrounded you, your dailies and your workspaces, who were those people that gave you guidance and motivation?
So many people. In fact, it would be almost impossible to mention them all, because also another thing about media, it's also teamwork. What we're doing today is a question of teamwork. I mean, there's a Salman, there's a nervous cameraman behind the scenes. Hopefully we did in one take, that kind of stuff. Radio, there's a producer, there's technicians. So wherever you go, whatever you do in life is actually a result of teamwork. And I would say family, the support of my late wife, for example, of my children, who really went through some very hard times because of the crazy things that their dad was doing.
Because that's also the thing of, because you have to be a father, but you also have to go away.
Yeah.
And that's the sacrifices that comes with the career.
Double.
Yeah.
I mean, when my son was born, he decided to come 3 weeks early, and I managed to be at the birth, but the following day I was on the plane for Jerusalem, and I only saw him 3 weeks after that. Wow. That kind of thing is tough. Another situation, what your children have to go through is that when I was in Libya, a South African journalist was killed, and the news got back to South Africa. A South African journalist is dead. And the teachers at my children's school came and said they're very sorry what had happened to me. And they hadn't been informed of anything, and I was still alive. And that was a bit of a traumatic scenario. We got through that because, fortunately, I think that night I got through. I sat for and I said, I'm fine and all that kind of stuff. But they'd had to go through that kind of trauma. Or another situation where during the days of Pagad, I'm not going to go into too much detail. My daughter, a couple of years ago, was working for an NGO, and she met a certain individual and said, okay, yeah, I know your dad. When I was with Pagad, we instructed to kill him. And again, your children have to bear the brunt of that kind of stuff. It's not easy. So that's why I will say it becomes a question of teamwork, and you have to be sympathetic to those who are around you, particularly when you go through a tricky situation, not to take it out on those around you, because they're actually supporting you.
That's a lot to deal with, because again, you grow up wanting to look after your family, but at the same time, to look after them, you also have to do your job, which also puts them in danger at the same time. Or not danger, but it puts them in difficult circumstances.
It puts them in the eyes in a way that you do not want your family to be exposed.
And then as they followed your path of journalism, how do they see your job now at the same time?
They're interested in it. I hope they're proud of it. My daughter did show an interest in journalism, but she's now working as a teacher.
So they reversed.
Yeah, it's a kind of a reversal. My son is a technician, so he's a technical guy. So he sees the world slightly differently to me, who's not a technical person.
And then I'll say it was growing up, I'll say, within Cape Town and also getting to tell Cape Town stories. And so you've also been, I'll say, part of the teaching system for a lot of the journalists as well.
Yeah.
What has been like the main, I'll say, moments of that you can give an aspiring journalist from all the things that you've seen now?
Go for it. You just have to go for it. As simple as that. It's like a leap of faith. Jump on the edge of the cliff. You will land on your feet. And don't be scared. I mean, follow your dream. It's not going to be easy, but go for it. It's a very interesting life and a very interesting career. You're never going to be driving a Ferrari unless you get involved in state capture. But you're not going to be wealthy, but you're going to be a billionaire in terms of life experiences and understanding humanity in the world.
You're going to be rich.
You're going to be very rich as far as that is concerned, not materially.
And also you'll tell the stories, but also people will tell stories of you as well now.
Hopefully. I don't know.
We're here to tell your story now. When was the first time you went to Palestine?
I first went there, I think it was in the night, just after the Oslo Accords. I did a number of trips there over the years.
With who did you go there first?
I went there originally with Moulana Ihsan Hendricks. They used to go with groups. The first trip I did with a guy called Wadda Hanfer. He organized it from Johannesburg. He became the head of Al Jazeera eventually. And it was basically a fact-finding mission. And that was the first trip. The other trips were with Moulana Ihsan Hendricks and being a guest of Sheikh Raid Salah, leader of the Islamic movement in 1948 Palestine, which is not the West Bank and not Gaza. So I was very fortunate in those trips. I've seen the whole of that territory. I've been everywhere in Palestine and Israel you can think of, and also the neighboring countries as well. But I did a couple of trips to Palestine, and eventually I wrote a book about it, which didn't sell very well, but at least I wrote the book.
But that's also the thing of whether it sells or not, you must still get the story out there.
Yeah, the experience is there. In fact, on Voice of the Cape, I had a series called Letters from Palestine, which ran for a very, very long time. I got very inspired by a journalist called Alistair Cook, who was very conservative, but every week used to do a series called, I think, Letters from America. And I liked the format, reading out just a short piece. And I used to do that, and I found that very effective in radio. Just you read out a little piece of your views or what you experienced, you top and tail it, and it's a production.
It's a great segment also because it's you and it's the people, I'll say the people of Palestine at the same time.
Absolutely.
But you also make Palestine real in terms of it's a real person's experience. It's not just it's not just the journalist, it's not just the reporter. It's the way of what they're living through on that side as well.
Well, that is my experience at Palestine. I was very lucky. I didn't spend my time in Palestine living in expensive hotels. One trip we stayed in al-Faham, the village north of the country, and we were part of the everyday life. And touring around the country, I would always be with Palestinian friends or Palestinian guides, and they would show you the underbelly of how things really worked and how things really happened. And also been very lucky to have encounters with the Waqf of Al-Aqsa. I've been fortunate to see every inch of Al-Aqsa as well, which is an amazing place. And I would recommend anybody who gets the chance, go to Jerusalem, go to Masjid Al-Aqsa. It is a haram, it is a sanctuary, and there's incredible spirituality in that place, despite all the noise that's being made outside and sometimes inside.
What was that experience also to see, I'll say, Aqsa for the first time? Because I'll say we see it on posters and stuff. What was that moment for you, witnessing that and going, this is the part of the story I must take back?
Well, I mean, Al-Aqsa is in my heart one of my favorite places. It really is. There's so much spirituality there. And I can remember one summer's night sitting in the Dome of the Rock, which is the Golden Dome.
Mm.
There's a rock there, and that rock is where the Miraj took place, Rasulullah Sallam, going into the heavens. But people don't know that underneath it is a cave. And I sat in that cave one night on my own, beautiful piece, right under the feet of Rasulullah Sallam, where he performed the Miraj. Just one of those magic moments that you have when you travel and you keep it for the rest of your life.
How do you tell that in a story? Because I feel like that's so personal that something you want to share, but can you get the words for that?
Words is difficult. I mean, an example is when people come back from the Hajj, which is an intense experience. They talk about the bait and the dates and stuff. They actually can't talk about the Hajj because it's such an intense experience. Very difficult.
And so that's essentially the job of the journalist, is to find.
You have to try and find those words. And I can remember I covered the Hajj, and with the Yusuf Fisher on Voice of the Cape saying, "How do you feel? How do you feel?" I'm saying, dude, I don't quite know. I'm still going through the experience. So it's for me, it's difficult to imagine how hard it is for everybody else.
And then also to go back to those, how many I'll say trips have you gone to Palestine since your first time at least?
I went there more than 4 times. The last trip was when they had the elections, and after that the doors closed, because by that time we were associated with this and that, and we would not be allowed to go into the country. The last time I visited, I went with Ibrahim of the ANC. I was actually an observer of the elections, and I covered Gaza. That was the last time I was in Gaza. It was 2005, 2006, and we covered the whole Gaza, monitoring the elections.
So over your time, we could literally see the party feast strengthened?
Worse and worse and worse. I mean, post-Oslo, there was a bit of easiness in the air. You could kind of do things. And every single time I went back, it just got worse and darker and darker and darker. Very, very sad.
It's also because now when we see the visuals, the thing that blows my mind is essentially I'll say with Palestine is like there's no airport. So when people speak about, they came from Palestine, and it's so difficult to get out if there isn't an airport.
That's a good observation you've made, because just getting through the checkpoints, getting through customs, immigrations, it's a nightmare. And it's demeaning and it's humiliating, particularly for Palestinians. I mean, I've been to so many times, I've been to checkpoints, and you've got a little lighty, 17 years old, still with pimples on his face, shouting and screaming at a 65-year-old man at a checkpoint. There's no respect. And that's the problem with Israel. It's the most disrespectful, disgraceful, dishonest country on the face of the earth. A lot of the people there are racists beyond imagination. The settlers are the worst. Some of them, unfortunately, South Africans and Americans, the worst of the worst. And there's no future for a country like that. There's absolutely no future for a country that sees itself as racially superior to every other living thing on the planet, which is basically what we're witnessing at the moment. And the interesting thing is that the Palestinians, there's a saying by Sheikh Ahmad Yassin, I exist, therefore I resist. Just by existing, they're resisting. And if one looks at the idea, the religious idea, that as Muslims we are tested, Palestinians don't need to be tested. It's us who's being tested with what's happening in Palestine at the moment, how we respond to it. Palestinians, they passed the test with flying colors a long time ago.
Every time I'll say photos and videos, when I see the kids smiling, it blows my mind to go to know what they're living through, and then still finding the courage to smile, the courage to live. And you go, that, like you said, that's the resistance. That's the thing
it's amazing. I mean, in Gaza, I would go there when I used to go there, and people would say, no, they're not going to get us down. We are the winners. And it's one part of the world where I've really seen what Iman, what faith means, because they have nothing else except faith. And I get very, very angry when people say, yeah, Hamas is fundamentalist or whatever. If you were in their position, what would you be doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's the question which the West and the rest of the world struggles to answer, because they don't know.
Yeah. And also you have to fight for survival. You can't question why they fight. You have to just believe that they want to live.
It's a human right, and the United Nations acknowledges as a fact that a people such as the Palestinians, legally, international law, do have a right to resistance. And yet the United Nations, which is about as effective as an old lady with a handbag, will dilly-dally, and the Security Council will veto this and veto that. It's morally disgusting, actually.
It really is. So in your books that you've written, written,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's a verb.
Yeah, you've covered Palestine. What were the other? Take us through all the books that you've done, because you're busy with, so we're going to walk through them now.
The first book was called Notebooks from Makkah and Medina. The second one was Surfing Behind the Wall, My Palestinian Experiences. The third one was The Gift of the Giver's Book, A Mercy to All. The fourth one was a book on Tuan Guru. The fifth one was a book on Sheikh Abu Bakr Effendi. The sixth one, which is in progress right now, is about the Kramats. And there's a seventh book, which is a novel, which is partially finished, which is called The Chronicles of Ayman, the State Capture Sufi. I'm hoping to get that. Maybe someone will publish it. I don't know.
So, where do we start? So, I'll say surfing in Palestine. In
fact, the first surfer in Israel / Palestine was a Palestinian.
How do you find him? How do you go? I'm going to go to Palestine to go surf. Because it's also, I feel like that's also you finding all the things you love in the world of going. Journalism.
I didn't surf in Palestine, by the way, but I mean, the first surfer was there. Yeah.
So how do you go about writing or finding that story?
Yeah, I don't know. Things just happen sometimes. I mean, I've also traveled in surfing. I've been to places like Morocco. I surfed in Morocco, North Africa.
Not known for surfing necessarily, but
yeah, I've been to Indonesia, Bali, to Reunion in the middle of the Indian Ocean. A French island,
which is another politics we will get into.
Yeah, that's another issue. Yeah.
So Reunion, Bali, Morocco,
and then Namibia.
Nice.
And then I've basically covered, the whole coasts of southern Africa.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. In another kind of guise, you could say.
Yeah. So then in Palestine, how does that come about? That story of surfing, in also because it's also that thing of finding joy in a space that there is not much joy to find.
Well, the irony is that a former world champion, Kelly Slater, who's of Lebanese extract, and a Jewish surfer actually got surfboards into Gaza many, many years ago. And I've seen waves in Gaza and I've seen waves in the Mediterranean. And it's one of the untold sad stories of Gaza that there was a Palestinian surfing community in Gaza itself. But with what's happened now, where are the people? It's all gone. It's all gone. Sad.
But again, I think that's also what journalism has the magic to do, is to go find the gems, not only the sad stories, but to just also find like the small heroes in communities, which again,
they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
Who has been of your favorite, gems that you spent time with or discovered?
Everywhere,
is there any standout ones that they got to change you a little bit?
I remember in Jordan, I'm deep in the country, desert. And I come to this village with my guide, and I wanted to go somewhere to find some monument or ruin or something. So the guy says, no, you're not going now. I've just sent somebody to kill a goat, and you're going to have dinner with us. Don't even know who the person is. And he insists that we have to stay and enjoy this goat. And these are things that really make an impression on you. We realize that this is such amazing human values being shown here: hospitality, kindness, friendliness. He doesn't know me, and here he is, like, sent his son to go and kill a goat, which is expensive for them, but they will do that. Or in Gaza again, being served roast chicken and Coca-Cola before the boycott era, and feeling incredibly guilty that they were feeding us like this when we knew that these guys probably hadn't eaten themselves. Stuff like that, And it just goes on and on and on. The old man in the tent in Pakistan saying, don't give me the water, somebody else must have the water. The selflessness of some of these people around the world is amazing. So the glass half full scenario with journalism and traveling is seeing the good side of humanity.
Mm.
In fact, Sayyid Muhammad Alawi al-Maliki, who is in fact my sheikh, he's passed on, may Allah be pleased with him. He told me, he said, Shafiq, there's lots of dark clouds, but there's always a silver lining. But the way he said it was very, very profound.
And then also, as a journalist, you also just have to trust people blindly to an extent. Because if someone's going to say, I'm going to lead you into a place, you just have to trust that they have the good intentions for you, because you really don't know where you're going to end up.
Well, in Libya, for example, in 2011, this guy said, I'll drive you to the front. I had to trust that he knew where the front was, because the front was moving every single day. And I had to trust the fact that he wasn't going to drive me into the hands of the enemy and get blasted. You have to have that kind of faith. And sometimes you do get a bit nervous, but you have to push through it. And alhamdulillah, I'm still here.
Alhamdulillah. And then, so all these, I'll say, moments of journalism and stories that takes you out of your world, it's something that also brings you closer to Allah as well?
It does. It actually makes you feel grateful. And they say that gratitude is a vital element of iman, of faith. I mean, every single time I have a meal, I'm grateful, because I know that somewhere else, somebody in the world isn't getting a meal. Or when I'm sleeping and it's raining, I know that just outside where I stay, some poor guy is sleeping in the gutter, for example, not out of choice, but the way that life has treated him. So it makes you feel very grateful and actually quite sensitive about other human beings, because you begin to understand what it's like to be in their shoes. It's called empathy.
You're also witnessing it firsthand, all these experiences.
Yeah.
So you come home, and then you can fully understand, like, the I'll say, the frustrations of coming home and going, we're not being grateful for what we have also.
South Africans, in my view, are ungrateful, particularly white people. Very ungracious about the way that they've been treated by this country, which they abused for more than 300 years. I also think that people who have been enfranchised after that are also not grateful. And I think as South Africans, from what I've experienced, we need to take a step back and realize how lucky we are. I mean, our inflation rate is manageable. Thank God lights now work. We didn't get switched off halfway through the interview, for example. We can drive safely to go home in some parts of the country. And I felt if South Africans are more grateful, we'll be able to do a lot more to help each other and to help the poor people of the country, who I think are our biggest headache at the moment. And by the way, our problems are not unique. I've seen the problems that we have in every other corner of the world. It's the same. Youth bulge. How do we get young people to work? How do we empower young people, and how do we give them joy and hope for the future? It's the same everywhere we go, and we just have to be aware of it. And there's a slightly older generation that mess things up. We have to start to fix it.
So how do we start to fix it? Because again, as someone who's been in, because the role of the journalist is to be the insider and the outsider at the same time, is to watch and comment, but also be unbiased at the same time. And comment it's very difficult to be unbiased.
There's no such thing as objectivity is the biggest myth in journalism. You're not objective. You represent your worldview, and you represent a worldview. As long as you're honest about that and you are consistent, people will trust you. It's as simple as that.
So if you acknowledge who you are and how you got to where you are, then you understand what's happening.
Things fall into place. Yeah, and in terms of like how do we fix for the future, cliche Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. It's a prophetic example, in fact, that look at other people, and if every person in this country who has got 10 Rand gave 10 Rand to a poor person just for one day, you'd see a sea change. The world, it would change. It's actually as simple as that.
That's so wild that the maths is that easy to do. So, but that sense of Ubuntu, has that been that? When does that start in you? Because I also feel like that's been a running motto throughout your life, especially now with community radio. Ubuntu is the thing that keeps our radio stations going and being the lighthouse that it is.
To understand Ubuntu, you've got to go through hardship. And one amazing thing about our Muslim community, we don't understand and realize how much hardship we've actually been through. And my latest book is revealing it to me. I mean, forget about the whole black empowerment landscape, which affects us quite severely in this country. Our people came here as slaves. Our slaves, for example, had their names taken away from them. They they couldn't be on the streets after 10 o'clock at night. They were not allowed to talk in public, had to carry a lamp if they walked at night. And long before apartheid, our community was carrying passes in the 17th and 18th centuries. And I get frustrated that our politicians, most of whom have got the brains of a brick, need to understand that in the Western Cape at least, and amongst the Indian community, people really suffered, but they're never ever given credit for it as the original indigenous peoples as well.
Yeah, I think that's also a South African thing. We speak of, we suffered, but we don't understand that our neighbors have also suffered in the same suffering in a different font. Maybe it's like we sort of like separate our struggle from everybody else's struggle, and when we can understand that we've all struggled, it will help us all. Essentially, the Ubuntu that comes with it.
Yeah, you got to be humble. I'm not saying I'm humble, but you've got to like blow yourself down, get to ground level, and then you can see what's happening.
That's essentially also the trick to getting the story out of the people.
Absolutely.
Being the proper journalist as well.
Yeah, as a journalist, you've got to be approachable. You've got to at least try and be humble, and you've got to listen, you know. People don't care what you've got to say. They want to listen to what the other people have got to say.
And it's the thing I've learned from it now is that you've always been working. Have you? Because it feels like you've moved from medium to medium, but there's always been a way for you to do the thing you love to do.
Yeah, it's funny how it's happened, because I was just saying the other day, the wife I'm married to now, she wants to go to Turkey. I said, I can't be a tourist. I don't know how to be a tourist. When I was last in Turkey, they wanted to take me to the Hagia Sophia Mosque. I've been there before. I said, guys, I'm done with that. Now, there's a job to do. And they couldn't understand it. And the only other person I know who's like that is Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman. He says, you also can't be a tourist.
Yeah.
Mind is working too much.
So maybe you must go on holiday on a fact-finding mission and use that as just a
Use it as an excuse.
yeah.
Yeah.
So can you tell us any more about the book that you're busy with now?
Yeah, this book is called the Circle of the Saints, the stories of the Kramat at the Cape. And it will feature about 30 to 32 personalities. And it's been quite a journey because I've discovered in the process, I've completely rewritten their history, completely rewritten it. And a lot of the things that we believe are true are no longer true. I've investigated some of the myths, some of the legends. It is an amazing story, an absolutely amazing story. And every single Kramat or Wali was a hard worker, extremely hardworking. Their iman, their faith was a very high level. They were Sharia-centric, and they were compassionate to other people, no matter who they were. And it was Islam at the Cape that actually brought people together. This is why our community is so varied, because the one thing that the underclass, the free blacks and the slaves got to identify with, Islam was their liberation, not politics.
And also with Tuan Guru was also, I'll say, it's my mother's lineage to the mosque as well. So you speak about it, and it's such a, every time I read about him, I just learn so much more than he was such an integral part of the community that we have now as well.
Amazing character. Tuan Guru is the reason we are here today. The madrasa that he founded in 1793 was inclusive. Men and women, everybody, and you could be black, green, blue, you could come to his school. He had the first non-racial school before apartheid. And by bringing people together in the madrasa, he created the Cape Muslim identity, which is completely mixed. I mean, you go to a mosque and you look into the faces of people at the Jumu'ah, you see the face of every single nation of the world. And that's the Cape Muslim identity. Very unique one. You don't find very many communities in the world like ours. We need to understand who we are. We are very, very unique.
It's you say that many times we see other nationalities, and I don't see many people that look like me. And then we went on holiday a few years ago to Bali, and that was the first time I saw like the aunties there. Then I go, I know these aunties look like my aunties.
You see the Buddha from the corner in Rose Street standing there in Bali or in, yes, exactly.
Yeah, it was the first time I go, these are my aunties that live in Woodstock. These are not the people that we know here.
And you're almost disappointed when they can't speak Afrikaans.
Because then we do hear the Tramakasi.
Yes.
And there's like a few words or two that you go, oh, these are actually the route that we got to get here as well.
I saw a couple of Balinese playing dominoes on the beach many, many years ago. And I had to stop and scratch myself because this could be under the tree about in the Boerkaap, opposite the restaurant. Exactly that, smashing it on the table. The same laughing. It could have been the Boerkaap.
Yeah,
seriously.
It's a really I'll say a warming thing to see people that look like me, at least in other nationalities. And then your novel that you're busy with.
Yeah, that's about a guy called Ayman, and he gets on the wrong side of one of our most prominent politicians by exposing his state capture industry that he's got. And he thinks that by escaping the digital world, by going up to Table Mountain and hiding there, he can get away from everything. And the exact opposite happens. And he goes on a very, very funny story where he exposes all these weird government guys, and he has problems with jinn. They keep on irritating him, and he chases them away, and they come back. And it's quite an adventure that this guy has.
And then as a writer, what tips do you have for writers and for potential writers? Because again, we come from a community where we are rich storytellers. We are people of stories. We are people of struggle. So we have things to say. What advice do you have for?
Writing is extremely hard. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Now, anybody who says it's easy is dreaming. It's practice, like anything. You just got to write and rewrite and write and write. And don't be sensitive to criticism. People will diss you more often than not. But if you keep on pushing, you will get there. I promise you. But it does require quite a bit of work.
A proper exercise, like a gym.
Yeah, like a gym. But I mean, write every day. Keep like a good way of writing is to keep a journal. Then you get into the habit of writing. And then from there, you learn how to construct your sentences, how to tell a story, which is the right moment to say this, right moment not to say that. Then eventually you transmogrify into an author. Hard work though.
Yeah. From many of the authors I've learned, like, it's a thing they love, but not necessarily a thing they like I was saying here, where it's a gruesome, but it's a very rewarding as well.
Well, I mean, you can like write 4 pages and suddenly realize, you know what, I've got to cut it all out because it's nonsense. And then you've got to start from the beginning again. So it's really tough when it comes to that, but you do have sweet moments and it's very satisfying. Nothing is more satisfying than going to exclusives and seeing your book there. For me, that was a total epiphany. Is that me? Is that my book there? That was a great moment.
And they have about the author, and that's you.
Yeah, and I think, okay, is that me? And I'm looking, is anybody going to buy the book? You know, they didn't.
Inshallah, we'll tell all the listeners and all the viewers must go buy all the books, Kanala. There's a whole library that Uncle Shafiq has given us.
Yeah.
Shukran for your time.
Have fun.
I've learned so much about you, and I also feel like this is only just the start of things that I'll say, destined to give us as well. There's many books on the way as well, many stories for you to tell.
Inshallah. Life is a journey.
And many waves also, many tides.
Yeah.
Shukran for joining us. I'm Yasin Barnes. This is the Muslims Connected podcast. Assalamu alaikum.